Welcome to the next episode of Life Happens and Then You Die, the podcast where we talk about everything in life. Nothing's off limits. We go from happy moments to chaotic to trauma. We're all over the place, and we just want to be authentically us and having these conversations and bring you along for the ride. This week we are doing something a little different. Melissa is going to join me after the introduction. We are taking a 24-hour focus challenge, and you're going to be able to see those clips here in a minute after the introduction. And then we discuss on our discovery of whether or not we were just busy or distracted or actually productive. So let's get into it.
All right, so my goals for this challenge was to cut out doom scrolling as much as possible. I've done a challenge like this before in the past, and I found that I didn't limit myself enough. I had limited TikTok and video scrolling basically, but then I found myself instead constantly checking my email or constantly scrolling on Pinterest instead. So this time around, I decided to block basically every social media app, every scrolling app, even Mercari, eBay, and Facebook Marketplace. I also really like to scroll on Reddit and Twitter, so I cut those out too. But I gave myself a little bit of freedom because I do work in social media. So I basically have an app on my phone that is going to restrict my access to these apps from certain times of the day. So I'm restricting myself from 2 p.m. until 9 a.m. And there is a little bit of a fail safe just in case I need to get in there for work. So it does a 10-second countdown that after 10 seconds, it will let me back into the app for 20 minutes. These apps will be allowed for working. Like I said, I do Facebook ads, content for clients. So I need to be able to get in and post and schedule things. And the hard part is going to be not scrolling when I open the app. So that's going to be the challenge. I'm also going to try to limit myself to working within a certain time frame of the day. And so after like 4 o'clock, I'm not working. I'm not touching these apps for work purposes. Since we're starting with just a one-day challenge, I think the one-day challenge is going to be actually pretty easy, especially because we're doing it on a Monday. And Mondays are pretty busy for me. I stay pretty consistently working throughout the morning and the afternoon. And it's not usually until around 4 o'clock that I usually sit down and get the urge to start scrolling. My plan is to replace that scroll time with chores, hobbies, and especially I want to make more time for reading. All right, so we are going to get together with Jess and talk about how that first day went.
Okay, it is 5:30 in the morning. I am setting the ground rules for the daily challenge that Melissa and I are doing. My goal is mainly just to be productive all day. I work from 6:30 until 5. So I'm going to try to limit distractions there. I work in social media, so the goal is to stay off of personal socials while I'm working. Then for the drive to and from work, instead of listening to music, I'm going to attempt to listen to a podcast. Then while I am at home, I have several projects, contract work that I need to get done, and I want to start on some artwork, so that is my goal. I'm going to track how many distractions that I have and see what I can minimize. I'm not too worried about it because I don't have a lot of distractions. I don't do a lot of socializing, so we'll see how it goes.
So let's just go into, do you want to go first? How was your day yesterday, Jess?
It was really interesting because I went into this challenge convinced that most of my distractions would be external. And to track it, I actually kept a tally mark every time I got distracted throughout the day. What surprised me was about only a third of those distractions came from outside sources. My phone would buzz, I'd get a message, or someone would stop by my cubicle to chat. Those were the obvious ones. The bigger surprise was the other two thirds. Most of my distractions happened when I hit a difficult task or had a lull between projects. Instead of staying present, my mind would immediately wander into something emotional. I'd start replaying a conversation from the day before, worrying about something in the future, or getting caught up in a problem that wasn't even in front of me at the moment. And by the end of the day, I had logged more than 23 distractions. That's more than one every hour.
That's like, that just reminds me of Paul's, my husband's sleep apnea test that once every minute he stops breathing. It's like once every minute you're distracted.
Yeah, it was wild. I really didn't think I was that distractible. Going into it, I was thinking, I've got this. I have a
Hmm.
pretty small social circle. Not a lot of people are constantly reaching out to me. So I figured staying focused wouldn't be that hard. But it turns out I was very wrong. The good news is I still got everything done that I wanted to do. I stayed off socials, I stayed off console, I got my content done, and I started working on my next artwork. What surprised me was how often I'd sit down to work on something creative and my brain would immediately latch onto a memory or a person. I'd be painting along and suddenly it was, this reminds me of someone. And now I'm thinking about them instead of what I'm actually trying to create.
Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So your approach was kind of like free from distractions so that you could work better, and also so that you can like fit in some things that maybe you weren't making time for before.
Yeah, because I tend to pick up a lot of different projects. The ones that pay the bills naturally take priority, but the passion projects
Hmm.
usually end up on the back burner, and I'm trying really hard not to let that happen. This podcast is a good example. It's something we're excited about, something we're genuinely wanting to build. So, part of this challenge was making sure I was intentionally creating time for it instead of waiting until I had leftover time. I think that's what I really am trying to protect, not just my focus, but my ability to make progress on things that matter to me before they get crowded out by everything else.
Yeah, yeah. You want to hear about my day?
Yes, absolutely. And then I have some follow up thoughts that we can talk about.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so my day wasn't too bad. Today actually was a little different, and we'll go into that much later, but my day was pretty good. I do a lot of work and I work from home. So I don't have kids. I do have a pet. My husband also works from home, but there really aren't that many distractions, and I actually find that I zone in a lot. So I don't really check my phone that much because I'm just zoned in. But also my phone, I don't know, I'm not very popular. My phone's not going off all the time. So that wasn't so bad. For me, when I am tempted to check social media and start like doom scrolling, which is what I wanted to stop doing, it's usually around 4 o'clock when I'm done with work. I've maybe cleaned up the house a little bit and I'm ready to just sit down and relax. I will just reach for my phone instead of maybe any other hobby, right? So it wasn't too bad. I got done with dinner, and instead of scrolling on my phone, I played a game, and then I did get some reading in last night. But after I was done reading, I have this tendency to scroll myself to sleep. And after I read a novella, so it was short. I finished it in like 1 or 2 hours because I wanted something short to get back into my reading hobby. And after I was done, I was like, it's not like I can just keep reading until I fall asleep because I just finished my book. I would have to start another book. And so I was like, oh, I really want to just like pick up my phone and just scroll until I fall asleep. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
nope, not doing that. I can't even remember what I did. I think I just like sat there until I fell asleep, which is just so weird for me.
Yeah, I do want to know what book you were reading, though.
Okay. I can't remember what it's called. It is, let me look it up. It is an Amazon Prime book. It is actually from their Valentine series. It's the first one in the Valentine series. It's a
Ooh.
romance. Um, yeah, I don't remember what it's called. Let's see. Uh, it's the Improbable Meet Cute series on Amazon. Amazon Original Stories. Accidentally Yours is what it's called by Christina Lauren.
Oh, okay.
130-minute read. Yeah, that's about right. It took me like 1 or 2 hours. So it was good. It was better than doom scrolling, but I probably should have picked a longer book so I could read until I fell asleep.
You know, I am glad you got some reading in. That's something I didn't even think to put on my list. And I didn't actually get to the podcast on the drive to and from work, which I completely forgot about.
And the biggest thing, like throughout the day, I was trying to think, am I eliminating a distraction and then just putting more busyness back in. That's what it felt like a lot of the times that, oh, I'm not scrolling on my phone, but I'm going to play a game or, watch a TV show. I watched a documentary with my husband, and I still filled that time kind of with busyness. Just different busyness. Less brain destroying busyness.
Yeah, that reminds me of something I heard a long time ago. I'm a list person. I love making lists. And if I'm being completely honest, one of my favorite things is checking items off of those lists. But someone once asked me a question that stuck with me, and that was,
Mm-hmm.
are you putting things on your list because they're helping you make progress or because you enjoy checking them off? And I hated that question. But there's some truth to it. How much of what we're doing is actually moving us toward growth, and how much of it is just filling time so we can feel productive? I think that's what I kept coming back to during this challenge. I've always had a hard time just sitting still and doing nothing. I was raised to be productive, to stay busy, to keep
Mm-hmm.
moving. So when I'm not actively doing something, my brain doesn't necessarily relax. It just starts looking for something else to occupy itself with. And sometimes the distraction isn't scrolling social media, sometimes it's replacing one form of busyness with another and calling it
Mm-hmm.
productivity.
Yeah, and I think as a culture, we have conditioned ourselves to keep our minds busy and not really accept the quiet and indulge in the quiet. And that was something I was thinking too, is that maybe I need to eliminate distractions and then just kind of reflect and not do anything, not listen to anything, not watch anything, not do anything, and just be.
Yeah, what would that be like? There was actually an article that
Yeah.
came out recently talking about how people can't just watch TV anymore. They have to be doing something while they're watching it. And I realized I'm kind of the same way. I used to be able to sit down and just watch a show, but now if I'm watching something, I
Yeah.
have to be doing something else. Usually it's drawing or working on a project
Yeah.
or something at the same time, or I lose interest in the show and I can't focus on it. And it's weird that I feel like I pay better attention that way. But when you say just sit and be, my brain immediately goes, oh, okay, but then what? I've heard meditation does wonders for that. I've never really attempted it, but maybe that's the point. Learning how to sit with your thoughts for a little while without needing to fill space with something.
Yeah. I do the same thing. I do the same exact thing. Even when I'm doing a craft, like an analog hobby, which is like really good for your brain, right? I'll also still have a podcast in the background or a YouTube video in the background or a Netflix movie, whatever it is, just playing while I'm doing my little thing. So,
So I did prep a few questions, and I want to start with this.
mhm.
A lot of my distractions ended up being emotional. Did you have any distractions that were emotional that weren't external?
I think just reflection was the only thing. I spent a lot of my, those times when like maybe your computer's loading something and you want to like grab your phone and be like for 30 seconds, like you really don't need to do that. I found myself reflecting on the challenge a lot during those times. So,
Which I found interesting because when those emotional distractions would come up for me, especially when I was replaying a conversation or thinking about something that was bothering me, most of it was completely outside of my control. In fact, the
mhm.
harder I tried not to think about it, the more my brain kept circling back to it. So
Hmm.
on my lunch break, I actually tried something a little different. I thought, okay, instead of fighting this, let me spend a few minutes thinking it through. Let me actually feel these feelings and understand why it keeps coming up. I figured if I acknowledged it, maybe I could move past it and stop revisiting it every time I had a free moment.
Did it work?
No.
Oh no.
I think I just need more practice with it because whenever there's a lull, my brain wants somewhere to go. And if I don't intentionally direct it somewhere, it tends to wander back to whatever unresolved thing has been sitting in the background. And to be honest, I should probably add that my nervous system was also on pretty high alert during this challenge because of some personal relationship issues. So I wasn't exactly operating from a calm, neutral baseline either. My nervous system was on high alert.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's probably the hardest time to let go of, you know, those digital distractions too. Like you want to be distracted, you kind of crave that when you're going through something like that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know how social media algorithms work. Like, we know exactly what's going on with you right now, so here's 17 videos about heartbreak.
You're like, no,
I
thank
don't
you.
want the CIA boyfriend analysis. I don't want the here's how to get him back videos. Just leave me alone.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's actually what made this challenge interesting for me because it happened during a time when I had a lot going on personally. And once I started removing some of those distractions, I became a lot more aware of what was already taking up space in my head. I don't think the challenge created those thoughts. I think it just made me realize how much of my mental bandwidth they were already consuming in the background. So even though it was uncomfortable at times, it was probably a good thing. It made me more aware of some things that my subconscious was still trying to process instead of just covering them up with more noise. So, hey, I think we touched on this a little bit already, but do you think we become uncomfortable with gaps in attention? Like when things start to slow down and there's nothing immediately demanding our focus?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Today, well, okay, we haven't said this yet, but we're extending the challenge. But today, I had a harder time during those gaps. But something that has helped me, I did a couple things that have helped yesterday and today. I see this little gap right there on my phone. That's where usually my social media apps go. And I moved it so that it wasn't even there. They're still on the phone, but you have to swipe to the next page to get to them. So because I found when I did this challenge before, I would I just have this habit. There's just a habit of clicking on the apps even if you don't need to be in them. You just reach for your phone, you automatically just start clicking and it's like, why did I even open this? So I moved it so it would be a reminder before I even click on anything, hey, you're not supposed to be on there. And then what was the other thing that I did that helped? I put my phone in a different room so that I would have to get up if I wanted to use it. And I found that I just wasn't even using it. So that was good.
I like that. That's clever. I think most people assume that if they're getting distracted, they need more
Yeah.
discipline. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder if that's the wrong approach. Maybe it's less about having enough willpower and more about paying attention to the environments we create for ourselves. If the temptation is always right in front of you, eventually you're going to give into it. If we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to win these little battles hundreds of times a day, sometimes a small change to the environment removes that temptation entirely. And I think that seems a lot less exhausting than relying on self control every 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, and that's part of what I use. It's called Screen Zen. I have an Android phone, but when you click on any of the apps, it does a countdown for 10 seconds. Well, you can change it to however many seconds, and you can change this question. So mine says, "Why am I checking?" And it just makes you double like reevaluate. Just, are you sure you want to be doing this? Is there a reason? Is there intention? Which is one of the notes that I had, because going back to, are we replacing these distractions with more busyness? I kind of like wanted to shift into, the topic of the day was, are we busy or are we distracted? But are we intentional is probably, the bigger question here.
Yeah, I love that. The thing I like about that question that is that it forces curiosity instead of judgment. Most of us catch ourselves getting distracted and immediately thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. But asking, why am I checking is a completely different approach. You're trying to understand the behavior instead of just criticizing it. And sometimes the answer is surprisingly useful. Maybe you're tired, overwhelmed, maybe you're avoiding something, maybe you genuinely need a break. The distraction itself isn't always the interesting part. Sometimes the reason behind it tells you a lot more. So I really love the intention approach.
Yeah, you're doing something with a purpose, with a reason, and not just to quiet your brain.
I feel like this challenge had a way of exposing things we weren't expecting it to expose. So now I'm curious. Going into it, what did you think was going to be the hardest part, and what actually ended up being the hardest part?
Um, I think the hardest part wasn't the end of the day where I like usually like how I was saying I will sit down at like 3 or 4 and just doom scroll for like an hour or like right before bed. Right before bed was really hard. But also, I forgot about all those in between moments, like I was saying, where, something's loading, you're waiting for the microwave to finish, maybe take my dog outside and I'm waiting for her to finish going potty. And in those moments, I usually just, oh, I have my phone. One thing I've thought is like, how do I replace that time? Replace it with intentional thought or reflection, but also like I was watching a YouTube video because I was like, I need help with this. I watched a YouTube video on someone who was like, this is what I did to help with doom scrolling. And she mentioned magazines. And I'm like, because I want to kind of like maybe read in those moments, but I don't want to read a book because they're too long. So kind of like flipping through a magazine or something instead of using your phone. I don't know. There's other options out there besides the phone.
Oh, I completely forgot about magazines. It's been a hot minute since I've been reminded of their existence. And I think we've gotten so used to our phones being the default answer to every little gap in the day that we've forgotten that there are other options. For me, though, I don't know that I went into this thinking there was going to be a particularly hard part of the day. I was more worried that a lot of what I wanted to do revolved around creativity, and creativity for me
Mm-hmm.
can be a little unpredictable. I thought the hardest part was going to be finding the motivation to create. What surprised me was that the challenge itself became motivating. We're talking about it publicly, we're tracking it, and I knew we'd be coming back and discussing the results. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of thinking, I'll
Yeah.
get to that later, it became, nope, I said I was going to do this and I'm going to follow through. And I think that accountability helped me create more than I normally would have. So let me ask you this. After doing the challenge, has your definition of distraction changed at all? Because mine definitely shifted from where it was when we started.
I feel like it does because I felt before when you had posed the original question, I felt like busy and distracted were different, but now I'm realizing they're kind of the same. And productive and intentional is what we're going for versus and busy and distracted are both the things we want to avoid. Because I was as I was contemplating the goal throughout the whole day, I just kept thinking, I'm just making myself more busy. I don't even have time to scroll. But don't I? Isn't that just almost the opposite of the point? Like, it's not that we want to be busy versus distracted. I think, we want to be more mindful.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think intentional and mindful captures it perfectly. When we started this challenge, I thought distractions were mostly external: phones, notifications, people interrupting you, that kind of thing. I didn't even consider that I might be contributing to my own distractions. And being as introverted as I am, I
Yeah.
probably should have seen that coming.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely not a psychologist, but one thing I've learned from studying psychology is that our brains tend to keep coming back to things that feel unresolved. If something is stressful, emotional, or uncertain, it tends to stick around in the background. So, my definition of distraction is a lot broader now. It's not just what's happening around us, sometimes it's our own thoughts pulling us away from what we're trying to focus on.
Okay, next question. Did you notice any patterns with the distractions?
Mm. I I mean this is just the same answer, but I think it comes back to all those in between moments were the ones that you don't really think about them until you're trying not to pick up your phone all the time, and I realized, wow, I do this a lot.
Yeah, I actually have that written down. I wrote down that it wasn't random. There were patterns when there were lulls in my day.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe we need a fidget spinners or something instead.
I love fidget spinners. I actually started learning Irish, so maybe I should make a goal of learning a new word every
Mm-hmm.
day.
Yeah, learn a new word.
Well, we're only a day in. Technically, we're extending this and doing a full week, so we'll have a lot more to talk about later. But where you're at right now, do you think you'll become more aware of your distractions as the week goes on? Or do you think some of that awareness starts to fade once the challenge stops feeling new?
I think it's going to get harder. I think the first day is going to be easy. We're like, oh, it's fine. I think already I have felt like my brain is like, whoa, wait a second. We're not regulating the way that we usually do through scrolling. And so my brain is like itching. Like I can't even describe it. It's just kind of like anticipating that, oh, we're going to scroll soon and then we can calm down. And I'm like, no, we're not. So that's going to be hard going into the next couple days, I think. I think what's really going to be difficult for me is the weekend, because now we've gone from I'm busy because I'm working, I've got all these weekly obligations, to the weekend where I don't work on the weekend. It's just all free time for 2 days. I have no responsibilities. I walk my dog, and that's like after that, it's all me. Whatever I want to do, whether it's clean or doom scroll or watch TV or play a game. So that's where things are going to get tricky, I think. And it's going to be towards the end of the challenge. So by then, we'll see. I don't know, maybe we'll go a little crazy. Maybe you and I will have to go do something together so that we can get out of the house.
That actually goes along with my goal of trying to be more social, so we should do it.
Oh, there we go. Let's go do something.
This has me thinking about how I want to approach the rest of the week. I don't think I'm going to cut everything out 100%. Instead, I'm going to intentionally schedule some time to relax. Maybe every couple of days, give myself 30 minutes to just relax, maybe attempt some of that meditation, do whatever I want without feeling guilty about it. I think that's the distinction we've been talking about. There's a difference between intentionally taking a break and accidentally losing an hour. For me, the hard part isn't always being productive. Sometimes the hard
Mm-hmm.
part is allowing myself to rest and actually enjoy it.
Well, that goes back to the intention piece, right? Because any of these apps can be intentional. You can make them intentional. You can say, hey, I have a stain on my shirt and I want to find out the best way to clean it. Actually, TikTok is sometimes a better resource than Google because it's real people posting real solutions and not just an AI overview of, use this and that. Like you can see results of cleaning hacks, or maybe you're scrolling Pinterest for specific inspiration, like, hey, I want to do this craft and I want some inspiration, or looking for, um, you're looking for specific things, specific answers. So I think there are times when these apps are intentional. And I don't know if you're going to do that. Maybe I will say that, hey, anytime I want to open the app, maybe I have to write down, why am I wanting to open this? And if I pass the intention test, like, oh, I need to find an answer to this, then I maybe set a timer, find the answer, turn it off.
Oh, that gives me the idea. I think I want to start writing a daily journal on this experience so that I can come back to it and have some reflection. Because I think after a week of doing it, there's some things that I might forget.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you think you're going to do differently in your ground rules going forward into the rest of the week after having done basically 2 days?
Yes, I do have some new ground rules that I want to set. Instead of focusing so much on the external distractions, I want to spend some time focusing on the internal ones. Things like calming down my nervous system, reflecting on my emotional well being, building emotional capacity, and focusing on my personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a lot of my energy needs to go this next week. Not necessarily trying to control everything around me, but paying more attention to what's going on internally and being intentional about how I respond to it.
Yeah, I'm excited to check in with you next week to see like what you discovered or how you shifted things to make that work for you. Yeah, I'm gonna read because it's been months, aside from last night, that I've read a book. And anytime I think about, oh, why haven't I read? I know it's because, well, you chose to doom scroll instead of picking up your book. So that's the one for me.
Well, hopefully, we'll see if those day one patterns continue through the rest of the week. It'll be interesting to see what changes, what gets easier, and what gets harder.
Yeah.
And I love that you have all these tools and systems to help you.
Mm-hmm.
You've got timers, app blockers, screen delays, all these strategies. Mine was basically me just staring at myself and going, nope, we're not doing that.
You're just full self control. I'm all like, I need help with this.
I don't know if I'd go that far. I was pretty good with the external stuff. The internal stuff was a different story. I won't get too deep into it, but there were definitely a few moments
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, yep, I can see why therapy exists.
Therapy is good, guys.
Therapy is great, guys. Highly recommend it.
It is really good.
Okay, I have one more question before we start our wrap up. Do you think people lack discipline or awareness?
I think it's awareness. I think people don't realize how much time they're spending on their phone, or even it's not even just phone, it can be other things too, that they're spending too much time and not finding a good balance between what you're doing, everything in moderation. Like, I'm not saying that you should never watch TV or you should never look at Pinterest or play a video game or watch a TV show, but you need to prioritize and balance out what you're doing so that your brain stays nice and healthy and your relationships stay really on good level ground, and it's just good for your whole life.
I think we tend to jump to conclusions about ourselves. If we procrastinate, get distracted, or spend 8 hours being busy without accomplishing what we wanted to, the immediate assumption is usually I'm lazy or I need more discipline. But I don't think that's true most of the time. A lot of the time, it's a lack of awareness. We don't notice the habits, the distractions, the
Mm-hmm.
emotions, or the patterns that are pulling us off course.
Yeah.
Now, are there some genuinely lazy people out there? Sure. But I think most people want to do better. Life is just noisy, and there are a lot of things competing for our time and energy. And sometimes the first step isn't trying harder, it's understanding what's actually getting in the way.
Yeah, and all these phones and apps are made to be addicting, so I feel like you can't really blame yourself, but you can learn about it and make progress and try to do better. So, yeah. Well, I wanted to issue this challenge to the listeners. So, we've done one day already, but now is your chance to jump in. And next week, when we come back for part 2 of this series, this little episode, you will have your own experience to kind of feel like you're a part of that conversation. And also, we would love for you to share that experience with us. Comments, Jess is going to set up an email address for you guys, and we'll plug that in here somewhere. And let us know what your experience was like, or if you've done it before, what your experience was then. Good, bad, we want to hear.
Absolutely. If you'd like to share your experience with the challenge or send us feedback, you can reach us at support@picassoeffect.com. That's support at PICASOEFFECT.com. And yes, I am kind of outing myself a little bit there. That's actually my art website. You can also find the podcast there if you're not listening to it on your favorite podcast platform. As always, please like, comment, and share. We really appreciate the support, and we love being able to share these challenges, experiments, and conversations with all of you each week.
Bye.